Well, Happy New Year, and at least I showed up. That's going to be my catchphrase. Hello, my name is Mark Manning. I'm going to start this podcast after years of thinking about it. Kind of dipped my toe in the water last year, got too busy. Name of the podcast is going to be This Much Is True. Because that kind of leaves it open, doesn't it? You know, which bit isn't true? You got to guess. So what I'm going to do is initially I'm going to show up for 3 months. See, does this get any kind of traction, which it may not, based on recent Petri dish tests that I did, well, a good few months ago. And so basically the format is going to be me here, just come in from an Irish night, a very cold, wintry one as well, with my beloved wife, just out for a walk. And I suggest look up at the stars occasionally. Just do it, you know. It helps put things in perspective. There was I, 20 minutes to 11 o'clock at night a few minutes ago, just in the little courtyard between my house and the studio here. Well, it's a converted log cabin, which I use as my voiceover studio. That's how I roll these days. It's all voiceover. It used to be corporate sales, but we'll talk about that some other time. And I looked up there, anyway, in the sky, the night sky, and there was these 4 beautiful, I don't know what they were, geese or something, birds anyway, in formation. And I just went, hey, you know, it's all bigger than little old me. Mind you, I'm not so small these days. I put on a few pounds over Christmas, but I'm working on it. I'm doing the intermittent fast thing. Anyway, whatever corner of the world you join me from, you're very welcome. This is on YouTube. I've got all the equipment in the world because of what I do to put it out on podcast, so I'll work on that. But here's the deal. I'm going to go 10, 20 minutes, half an hour max here with you. If you interact with me, there'll be some traction. And if you don't, there's going to be an awful void. And I will continue to live in that void, vacuum, whatever, right up until 31st of March, where I'd say, okay, I gave it a quarter. I gave it a quarter because I do get really busy. And that's how it'll go. So tonight's topics are wills, as in somebody dies and they leave a will, or worse still, they die intestate. Nothing to do with testicles. They die without leaving a will. And then everybody scrambles to see what they can get from the will. Now, that's subject number 1. And subject number 2, I would just say, I get it. You don't like working with someone. Let's just say you left them in the dust many years ago. You quit that job because you couldn't work with your co-worker. And sometimes, in the wee small hours of the morning, you find yourself going, I remember the time that so-and-so did this and did that. But here's the deal. Here's the thing, should I say. Sorry, as I slurp my Irish tea. What, if anything, did you learn from that person? You see, I think you can always go into salvage mode. And I'm going to tell you a very quick story, nothing to get excited about, shortly. If anything else occurs to me, I'm going to say it. But that's where we're at. So, wills, the death of a loved one. Presumably, you're not like, and there are vultures out there waiting around to see what they can scavenge from the estate. But many moons ago, not that long ago actually, I presented radio programs. And one day, it was a Sunday afternoon, I said, hey guys, text in if you've got any stories about wills, be they good or bad. Did somebody leave you the lottery equivalent, or was there a terrible falling out? And that's terrible. My poor old father, the late Colonel, he had this little thing, and he used to say, birds in their little nests agree that it is a shameful sight to see when children of one family fall out and fight. And what he was getting at was turbulence within families. Tumultuous times, there's a lot of teas for you. But how many of us know or have been in a situation where the will was divvied out, but not to everybody's satisfaction? And then everybody went, sorry, but they went apeshit. And people started firing around bits of jewellery or squabbling over bits of furniture, etc., because it hadn't been made clear in the will. Do you have any stories like that? I'll try and get you email address for, I'm trying to remember what it is. But put it in the comments here on YouTube. Did it happen? This program that I was hosting, I put out the word. What's the story? Anybody got story about Will? Sorry if I'm shuddering slightly on camera. That's a thing I can't help. And they came in their droves in terms of response. I couldn't believe it. The switch nearly blew up in the studio. But I always remember one guy's comment was, the family fell out over a cardigan and we haven't talked in 30 years. A cardigan. A simple garment designed, by the way, if you care to Google, by Lord Cardigan. They named stuff after lords, like a sandwich is named after Lord Sandwich. Now, please bear with me as my mind turns into a kind of merrily down the stream Irish crud, which it has a tendency to do. That's what happens when you don't get out much like me. But yeah, in the comment section here on YouTube, anything, just give me a line, something to go at. I'm going to just do something that's not really professional here, but let me just Google something because it's in our interests. And it's because this will answer yes. Okay, I've got it. So if you want to comment by an email, you can send it to thismuchistrue@protonmail.com. Okay? thismuchistrue@protonmail.com. Any of you listening in England may recall the band Spandau Ballet back in the 80s. This much is true. This much is true. Now I'm just sounding demented over a subject that's quite serious, because families do fall out and never talk again. And even like weddings can go by and funerals, and people won't show up because the land wasn't apportioned, or the furniture, or the car, or the bloody cardigan wasn't divvied out properly. Any stories about that? This much is true at protonmail.com or in the comment section here on YouTube. As I said, sorry the camera is juddering. The reason is the PC has been on all day and it's really hot now. Might do it for my new Apple. I've got a lovely new Apple laptop here. Oh, do you want to have a look? It's called an M2 and it's a serious piece of kit. There it is. Okay, so that's probably brought us to about 7 minutes, has it? I don't know if you've got any resolutions for the new year. And if you're like me, you get to a certain age, late middle age, where the years seem to go faster. I know they are no longer or shorter than at any other time, but I don't know about you. We cannot legislate for instinct. If Mark Manning says nothing else to you, just remember that. Boys and girls and transgender people and animals, we cannot legislate for instinct. And I don't know about you, but I feel something ain't right. Something ain't right. I felt like that after 9/11. I certainly feel like it after the whole COVID thing. I don't know how you feel about that. Strong feelings on both sides, I should imagine. I don't care to say. But, yeah, things just ain't right. I'm going to go off on a tangent, but it's a quick one. Because He was more handsome than me, but somewhat of a potato face. And that was the late Steve McQueen, that wonderful actor. And I see Ryan O'Neill, who had married Steve McQueen's wife, Ali McGraw, at one stage, passed away recently. He was a bit of a heartthrob. But for us fellow potatoes, I can say there's one scene in the movie The Great Escape. I love that movie. It has a fantastic atmosphere about it. A worthy cause to escape and free the world, you know. And Steve McQueen is playing the part of, you might remember the Cooler King. He was always been locked up in the cooler because he was always trying to escape. But he walks in to the Nissan hut at one point, and he's got his American cup of coffee in his hand. And he says, I don't know, but I feel something's going down. So he had that instinct. Something's going down. Okay, so a short recap. Here I am in Ireland, in from an Irish night, talking to you about my new podcast, This Much Is True. The topics in question are wills. And what happens when a will isn't made properly, is not made at all? Has it made a mess of your life? Has it come between you and your siblings? Have you any funny or really disastrous stories about it and how it can screw up your life, not just in the wake of the event, but for many moons afterwards, among families and what have you? And then I kind of went into, didn't I, about just having an instinct that things aren't quite right. Why? Because we're at the beginning of a new year. And for me, as I get older, every year seems to get faster. Stuff is happening, crew, and I just can't help it. You'll be delighted to know that I'm about to sign off very shortly. So, earlier I mentioned another topic. And it was about these, well, I use bad language. No, I think not. It's not a good way to start a podcast. But these miscreants, or bozos, or ass-you-know-whats that you work with sometimes, you just don't get along with them. And at one stage, it just all hits the fan, and you leave, or they leave, or whatever. But my point is, can you salvage anything from that relationship? And I was thinking back recently about a guy I used to work with, and he didn't particularly do me any favours. And let's just say the chemistry was all shit. Sorry, I have sworn, but anyway. But he had one redeeming factor. Again, you know, by way of explanation, I will point you towards the movie world. If you have seen the film based on Mark Zuckerberg and the success that subsequently was Facebook, there is a scene in that movie where he's moved out all the developers to the West Coast. And these are all 20-somethings. And they're in a little room. And his friend comes over to visit. Remember his friend who was very kind of preppy and conventional. He wasn't really that digitally minded. He was more sales, and he didn't quite get it. And he was chatting away, and Mark says, hey, leave them alone. He was talking about the developers, these 6 or 7 guys spaced out of their head on Coca-Cola and fried food. But what he was referring to, Mark Zuckerberg, was leave them alone, they're locked in. Now, locked in wasn't like locked down, although somewhat similar. He meant they were crystal blinker focused. And this guy I worked with, he had that. And I had, grudgingly, but I admired him. There used to be about a point in the morning, mid-morning, 11 o'clock or so-and-so. And if you were with him, he would take out his laptop, and you might be writing away doing something, but he'd be there, and that was him doing his admin, his invoicing, his responding to emails. Whatever it was, within those golden 15 minutes or so, he ultra-focused. And you would just, he'd be there, he may have had a headset on, he may not, but he would be laser beamed between the screen and the keyboard, and all as you'd hear, my friends, would be... And I'm sure in those 15 minutes, he did more than many people do, standing around a water cooler or a coffee clutch in an hour or two. He was tremendous. And I'm sure everything got done and all the T's were crossed and the I's dotted. He was very impressive in that respect. The rest, we won't go there. Sorry if you've headphones on. I've just clapped. So, have you anything at all that might give this some traction? My commitment is, as I'll say at the start of each show, at least I showed up. And when I can't, I will pre-record and put up at a certain time. But what I'm looking for is your stories. And they need not necessarily be about the topics I've just said, but it would help if they were about wills or something that you have learnt from a co-worker. In my line of work, which is voiceover, you'd be amazed the kind of people I meet. And before Christmas, I met a lady, and I'm not going to get in there because it's too early in the year, and it's not how I want to bring This Much Is True into the world. But a terrible thing had happened to her. And, you know, it was one of those things that you can say and make the right noise and say you sympathize and you empathize. But I couldn't. I could only imagine. And that came out of voice work. And then another guy, he had been horrendously abused as a child by a priest. And the priest used to come to the house every Sunday. And the mother, and many more in the neighbourhood, thought the sun shined out of Father X's behind. And he was of the old Irish school that came over stateside and Canada side in the 40s, 50s and 60s. And he had all the old gift of the gab, probably a bit like myself. But he was a wretch. I mean, the mother would be inside making dinner, making this beautiful Sunday lunch or dinner, whatever it was. And he, of course, would get pride of place at the table, being a man of the cloth. And in the front room, he was abusing these two little guys and many more like them. And it wasn't until years later, through therapy, that this man that I came to know revealed all to somebody. But he had blocked it out. It had been so traumatic. And now he's on his path, I suppose, looking for some, I don't know if justice is the right word, but he wants to put that situation out there and his story out there. And I know he'd talk to me. I'm not sure he'd want to talk just now, and maybe this isn't the platform for that. I'm not going to summarise again. I think you get the gist of what I'm about. It's quite late, and for those of you watching on YouTube, yeah, it's not going to look nice, is it? The old potato head on me is going to be juttering around because of the PC overheating. Well, that's a real Irish problem for you, isn't it? Top of the morning and the bottom of the evening. Here, I'll tell you what, I'll leave you with a laugh, right? I won't say how much I made, but I made very good money today for just, for very little, for a couple of lines, and not their real names, but it was the script was like this, right? And it was only, this business, by the way, voiceover, when you get it right, you've got to have a certain element of talent, but it can be, you have an escape velocity to some degree. You know, you can get good money for very little work, but if the person that commissions you deems that you're good enough, it's a good gig. So, essentially, I leave you with this. Congratulations, Sarah and Steve. Oh, by the way, I'll do it a bit better. This is a Liam Neeson, by the way, right? Well, how are you doing? And he does a kind of laugh as well. Right, so you got to get into Liam mode, right? So you get in nice and close
to that microphone and you say the following. Congratulations, Steve and Sarah. The father of the bride, Tony, asked me to remind you, Steve, that he has a certain amount of skills. Skills that he has acquired over a very long period. Skills that make me a nightmare, particularly with a butter knife. If you're nice to Sarah, that'll be the end of it. But if you hurt her, I will pursue you. I will find you. And I'll... you know the rest.
There you go, folks. That's the end of the inaugural This Much Is True. Are your ears bleeding? Please let me know. Either through the comment section, or if you want to go into a bit more detail about anything at all, you know where. This Much Is True at protonmail.com. Take care of yourself. Good people are scarce. Bye-bye.